Okay, everyone, sorry about that. Let me just click over into the open discussion from last week because that's what I'm going to focus on in the last little bit of the video here. In general, where our participation in last week's writing prompt discussion was excellent, the participation in the open discussion last week was spotty at best. Only 5 of you, which is less than half the class, actually participated in the open discussion. And we are really coming to the end of the semester here, and I know that this is something we've struggled with all along. But let me just offer some suggestions for what they're worth at this point. When you log in to do your writing prompt discussion, you have to come in 3 times because you have to post your original, you have to comment, and you have to reflect. So whenever you're logged in to do the writing prompt discussion, you might as well go ahead and post something in the open discussion because then you're more likely to get in there on 3 different days. And if you post something in the open discussion the same time you're logged in for your writing prompt, then you're going to get it up there by Wednesday, assuming that you have your writing prompt turned in on time. And so that's going to keep you in line with that post early, post often kind of rule, and make sure that you're getting as many points as possible for the open discussion and not just a big fat 0, because it's so hard for me to give you all zeros for lack of participation, but at the same time, if you don't participate, I can't give you the points. So let me just touch on a few things here. It was interesting to me that the only people that posted their research questions were the original threads, and we did have 4 this week, but that's okay. None of you in your replies talked about your own topics unless you were one of the people who had already posted your original threads. So that was a little bit of concern. Remember that when you're replying on these open discussions, you kind of want to touch on the things in the prompt as well so that your replies are as robust and have as much substance as they would have if you had posted one of the originals. But let me start by focusing on the research questions that were posted from David, Luke, Jessica, and Katie. All 4 of the examples I saw did a really good job remaining open-minded. I'll just start with David's as a good example of that. So, has the breakthrough in today's modern technology affected the reading and comprehension of our most recent generation for the better or the worse? And the reason I like this is because it says for better or worse, and that was something that almost all of you did a really good job with. You don't want to kind of imply the answer in your question, so make sure that whatever question you come up with, you're gonna ask it both ways. Could this be good or could this be bad? If it just said for the better or if it just said for the worse, then you'd almost be implying the answer in your statement of the question, which isn't a logical way to proceed. So I was very excited to see that this was kind of happening naturally. Even though we hadn't really talked about it yet, David. So good job. And then Luke's did that as well. Has it affected America for the good or the bad? This is one that I might try to focus or narrow down just a little bit. Affected America is kind of broad, but that's okay for this point in the research process. But Luke, as you get further in your research, you may find, well, I want to focus on this one particular effect, or I want to focus on this one particular region of America or one aspect of American culture instead of just affecting America in general, because America in general is a very broad thing. And then Jessica's did a great job with it as well. E-book books versus paperback books, is there really a difference? And what are the true reading statistics for today's generation? This one I would say is kind of almost too complex or too diverse, at least at this point. Jessica, you want to ask just one question, not 2 separate questions. So I would just focus on this question or this question, and instead of asking 2 things, really just focus on one. And then Katie, you did a good job inviting both answers as well. Do the benefits outweigh the risks? You're almost implying that the benefits will outweigh the risks here. I would almost say maybe just which is greater, the benefits or the risks, to allow the opportunity to answer it either way. But I did think the exchange that you and Luke had here about how you're going to narrow your topic was interesting. Luke, you're saying, you know, maybe you don't want to just focus on the ecosystem alone, and Katie's saying, yes, I do. And this may speak to, Luke, what I saw in yours is that you may end up actually narrowing yours down a little bit further as well. Let's see. Let me go back to the list of them here so that we can all see them kind of all together. What I want to show you based on the way this is set up is that moving your topic just from a topic like we have here here to an actual question like we have here is going to set you up for your argumentative thesis, because whatever answer you provide to the question is going to constitute the ultimate argument that you're going to make. So eventually you're going to have to pick a side in terms of how you're answering this question. Is it good or is it bad? Which I guess is kind of implied in what I've been saying all along. That's why you want to make sure that your question is open-minded and invites both answers so that you can come up with whatever answer you find to be the most valid through your research. Okay, so just a couple of suggestions that I've kind of hit on already for how to proceed with the open discussions in the future. Make sure that your comments do reflect the prompt itself. So I've seen a lot of comments like this one from Jessica here, just saying, you know, this is a good research topic, this will give you some interesting things to talk about, but really what I want to see is you connecting this to your own plans for the argument, or at the very least giving this writer some suggestions for how they might improve things. Let's see. I know a good example of that was the comment that Luke put to Katie's that I showed just a second ago. You know, Katie has a topic here that's pretty strong, but he's still suggesting some things to do differently that actually builds on his own topic, so there was a good exchange there, and that's definitely the kind of thing I'm looking for. And also wanted to show you all David's thread here is a really good example of, you know, how the conversation can kind of get stymied if people are just saying, huh, good question, good point, that was interesting, as opposed to what we see here on Luke's, where he posts and then Jessica posts, and then Luke comes back in and checks in for a reply, and then there's a lot of back and forth going on because Luke is checking in and replying to almost every single comment. And then here, this was really good. Rocky commented, Luke replied, then Rocky came back again. So this is a great way to get the points for posting on 3 separate days, just by having a conversation with somebody. So, you know, in a normal conversation, you don't just say things and then walk away. You listen to what the other person responds and then offer something of your own in return. I think Jessica's was another good example of one that had a good conversation. Thanks to Luke, because Luke, you were checking in a lot, but again, Jessica is doing the same thing here. So anytime you don't just walk away from your original post, that's going to help keep the conversation going whenever you check back in. In general, as I said before, there was minimal participation in here. If it weren't for Luke and Jessica M, I think we would have had about a third or even half as many posts. I think Luke posted about 4 times as many times as everybody else. So thanks, Luke, for your participation. Thanks, Jessica. Thanks, Katie, Luke, Jessica, and David for posting the originals this week. And it'll certainly be reflected in your grades as opposed to the other people who didn't participate and can't get points. So let me just kind of try to review, make sure that you're all coming up with a question. Here's some suggestions for how you can brainstorm topics, but remember, a topic is not enough. You have to narrow it down to an actual question, and then however you decide to answer that question will be the starting point for your argumentative thesis when it comes time to draft your argument. And then going back to the comparing sources, do know that you have to use the database for your argument sources. You have to have 5 scholarly peer-reviewed sources. So look at the first video in this posting, and it'll show you how to narrow the results within Academic Search Premier. And just understand that you're going to have more credible information, more relevant to your topic if you search through the database. Oh, and then one last thing I wanted to touch on, Luke. Let me see, where was your reflection? I know you asked about 4 different people if they could find videos in the database, and I can't remember who had suggested that, but I have never seen a video in a database, and I don't think those are typically included unless it's some particular database. Now, all different databases include all different kinds of sources. So like when you're looking at Academic Search Premier, that's a database that's designed to pull out scholarly articles for use by college students. There are other databases, for example, LexisNexis, that focus on news and legal briefs. There may be a database that focuses on video productions. I'm just not aware of it. So that answers your question there, hopefully. All right, going back to this week, don't forget to do all the requirements. Let's finish strong. Then next week we'll just have our rough draft workshop of the argument, and then we'll be very close to wrapping up the semester. So thanks for everyone's hard work, and I'll be checking back later in the week. Thank you.